45th Ward Alderman and noted Harry Potter villain, Jim Gardiner, is back in the news tonight. Lainie, have you been following this story?
I've been following this for a little while. I mean, I've lived in Jefferson Park, out in that area, and my grandparents had a home there for many years. So I don't live there now, but I definitely have a very strong feeling and sense of connection to that area. And this has been a disaster since day one with this guy. I think that. What I will say is this: I think there are certain temperaments that you need for certain professions.
That's for sure.
And these include things like law enforcement,
Yes.
anything in first response, and
Public
certainly,
service.
and if it's public service, and particularly if you're going to be a representative in a representative political role like this. And as far as I can tell, this Jamoke just wants a petty fiefdom. I remember, I think it was John Arena who he beat in the election, and that was, some people say it was NIMBYism because people did not want an affordable housing development in the area. Now, I will say this: I think there was, and I did see some rather racist and nasty
Yes.
posts about that. Now, there was an alternative perspective on that I do feel that needs to be addressed. Is that the developer of this project is not a developer that people liked. People were saying that the developer was responsible for another project in the neighborhood, which is a complete and utter eyesore. So, I believe in housing. I believe in affordable housing. And I really think it's a shame that Jefferson Park and that area over there, which is so accessible in terms of transportation, it's near the airport, metros, buses, you name it. The L, it's really great place to live if you want to get around the city. And I think it's a shame that it has not been developed the way it needs to be. Unfortunately, this meant getting, a good alderman was out. This guy, he has just had this reign of terror. And the kind of stuff that's happened with him and his constituents and and it's just, he doesn't have the temperament for the job.
Not only does he not have the temperament,
and he's evil. He's evil.
He's evil.
I mean,
let me read from the
evil.
block. I mean, that's why I say noted, because he looks like Lord Voldemort, or as E. Heller refers to him, Lord Aldermort.
Well, no, his nose is too big.
Okay, that's true
For that.
But
the point, your Voldemort doesn't have a nose. But yeah, but no, this guy. I mean, I expect sleaze from Alderman. I expect, graft and sleaze and all that. But this guy he's not even trying to hide it.
No. Well, he was, but he got caught.
Well, I got to tell you this. Okay, text messages, come on. Let's get into 21st century here. He knew what he was doing.
Did anybody know? Did anybody know that this was what he was like until somebody leaked those texts to show how he was behaving behind the scenes?
I know that there had been that he had some kind of a conflict with a previous partner of his, and I think there was restraining orders, and he had that hanging over him. And again, I mean, that sort of thing. Okay, accusations can be slung back and forth, but all of this is just not adding up for me at all. This guy is bad news. He needs to be out. He has no place in public service.
Well, the mayor thinks that he should be investigated by the city watchdog. But let me share. This is what happens when you cross Jim Gardiner, and this comes from Block Club Chicago, Ariel Parella Arelli. Jim Gardiner used his power to seek revenge against his critics. When a mom commented about him on Facebook, Gardiner sent city inspectors to her door.
Yep.
When a business owner organized a protest, Gardiner got police reports about him and planned to leak them to a neighborhood Facebook group. For 9 years, Jefferson Park mom Bella Ventresca has had chickens in her yard. They become part of the family, and neighbors appreciate the fresh eggs, she said. So when 2 city investigators showed up at Ventresca's door and accused her of illegally raising chickens and selling their eggs, she was confused. The Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection investigators seemed baffled too. They were just doing their jobs. After all, an alderman's office lodged the complaint. What Ventresca didn't know was Alderman Jim Gardiner of the 45th had marked her as an enemy, even though she doesn't live in his ward. according to one of Gardner's former staffers. The reason? A comment Ventresca made about Gardner's stalking case and ward superintendent on a closed Facebook page for neighborhood moms, Ventresca said. The city investigators left since no laws were broken, but Ventresca was rattled. That's what this guy wants to do. Intimidate through illegally, I would say illegal. He's illegally using his position in government to terrorize people who are critical of him. I mean, that's very, very clear. I didn't realize our public officials, this is like something out of like dictator governments.
Well,
there's
here's
no
the thing.
difference.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I will say this. There are an awful lot of aldermen who are long past due for investigations.
Truth,
I think
yeah.
we absolutely know that. And
And some serving that are under investigation. I don't know how they can continue serving.
Yeah, I mean,
when
this
the feds have got.
is just, yeah, I mean, it is something, and it's one of the things, as our colleague Jose talks about fear and loathing in the Windy City. I mean, there's a lot to fear and loathe here, that this is this astonishing city with amazing people, and we have this incredibly corrupt government. The stories that I hear from business owners would make your hair curl. There was also another incident in which a woman who was having an ongoing feud with one of Gardiner's constituents, who was a political opponent of his. She ran her car into this guy's yard and garage, and it took, I don't know that charges were ever filed. I mean, it was just, her case was it seemed to be held up by Gardiner's office. But and apparently there's a lot of toxicity in that community back and forth, but this cannot be allowed to happen. This guy, fine, investigate him, but he needs to be out.
I wonder if there's going to be, well, he might be out through legal means, because apparently there's some questions now about him illegally accessing records from the circuit court, I think. Yep. Yeah, so I mean, and Lightfoot said her office is organizing Friday to recommend Gardner's actions be investigated by a top city watchdog. Now I'm trying to find the information. Here it is. A watchdog for the county's clerk of the circuit court's office is looking into whether Gardner used his authority to improperly access 23-year-old court records belonging to a Portage Park business owner who dared to question him publicly. Lightfoot said she spoke to Gardner, who was married to one of the mayor's former aides, more than a week ago about his behavior when the scandals focused on disparaging conduct and comments about women. She told him the words attributed to him were absolutely unacceptable. Now that more reports have shown Gardner also tried to withhold services from residents and to punish critics, a full investigation needs to be done. Look, the moment that they prove that this guy illegally accessed those court records, done, out, charge him.
This guy is
throw him
not
in jail.
Yeah, this guy is a thug. And when I compare his actions to the actions of my own alderman, Andre Vasquez, who I disagree with politically and socially in many ways. But one of the things I'll point out about my alderman is when he first got into office, there was a lot going on with Fight for 15. $15 minimum wage, right. And some representatives of a couple of franchises and business owners came to visit him and to discuss their position. And he said, look, I believe in, Fight for 15. I believe in this. But he said flat out, I am the alderman for this entire area. And these are my constituents, whether they agree with me or not. And I had an obligation to meet with them. And, what he said is he came away from the discussion with more knowledge about his constituents, because for one thing, as he said, I didn't realize that owners of franchises are really very beholden to the franchisor, and there's a lot of control that the franchisor has over the the individual business owners, which can make some of these regulations more difficult and more onerous than we might realize. He didn't have his opinion changed, but he was, first of all, he felt he had to talk to these people because that's what he's in office for. And number two, he was able to have a better understanding of what they were up to. Now that to me is a politician. That to me, I would say, you can say statesman, but there's a sense of this is somebody who's taking their office seriously and not trying to destroy and harm your constituents or people who just happen to criticize you. This is awful.
Vasquez, as much as we might disagree with him on some things, he upholds the office with dignity.
He
This is
does.
what we expect of all of our public officials, alderpersons, law enforcement. Serve with dignity, and this is
There
all
with the
too often
dignity.
the problem, that too many of them think that they don't have to, because
You don't have to. Yeah.
they're privileged, and
Uh,
they're better. They're able to live by different rules than they expect the rest of us to, and that's the hypocrisy, I think, that always drives a lot of my outrage when we talk about these things on the channel.
yeah.
And a lot of people ask, well, what are the solutions? Don't look at me. I don't know what the solutions are. We vote. We expose these stories. We talk about these stories so that more people know what's going on. You want to know how to change things? Look in the mirror. Look to each other. There's only so much we can do here, sharing stories on Chicago Corner. There were some comments in some of the sub clips this week. You know, yeah, we're on here complaining about a lot of this stuff. And someone said, well, what are the solutions? I said, well, in particular to the story that we reported on regarding the traffic cameras, what is the solution? Well, there's a representative that's trying to pass a bill that's been sitting downstate since March. We've got the Citizens to Abolish Red Light Cameras under Mark Wallace trying to, shake the cages and bring attention to this. I actually wrote an email to that representative tonight to see if she'd come on the show and talk more about what can we do to get a bill like that passed? Because as people in the live chat, or I'm sorry, in the comments mentioned, yeah, we do want to figure out how to make change, but we rely on our elected representatives. We rely on talking about these things here to, like I said, rattle the cages. And, there are no easy answers, but, we just can't be silent about it. And we don't want to come on here, like we're complaining all the time. But when there's a lot that's broken and elections are supposed to fix these things and they're not, and people who are, taking activist actions are doing things and it's not changing anything, I don't know what the answer is. But
Well,
hey, Lainie,
I think I would point to something here, and there is that issue when you're voting for somebody. You can look at issues, of course, but you also have to look at character.
yes,
And I think what we're seeing, and when we're comparing two aldermen here, we're looking at different characters.
yeah.
And what is this person's track record of interpersonal relationships? What is this person's track record with his or her neighbors? How does this individual deport him or her themselves? If you've got
I would add,
somebody
Lainie, that's the media's job to report on this stuff before the elections. I didn't know. I mean, this is the first that Gardner's coming to my attention because of this absolutely outrageous behavior. But with stories about him preceding his appointment,
yeah.
wasn't the media all over this stuff to show that character ahead of time? I don't know.
Yeah. And then people were so angry with Arena about this housing project. I mean, that can point to their character as well. I mean, the stories that I'm hearing about, it's just not just Gardner. It's people living in that area, and their ongoing fighting. We could go on this all night, but the point is
Yeah.
there is something rotten in Jefferson Park.
Yep. Well,
And
there's
that's what
something
I'm going to
rotten.
say.
A lot of something rotten all over the city in too many wards, but not all of
Yeah.
them, but enough.